So the topic we have is 4 thoughts in regards to Shidduchim. The truth of the matter is, there's a letter of the Rebbe, before we start, there's a letter of the Rebbe with 3 thoughts. But in the past, when I gave those 3 thoughts, another question came up, which forced me to address another topic. Oh, ended up coming. I'm recording it right now, as we talk. As we talk, it's being recorded. We'll post it in Mitzvah Shem. Yeah. So the letter of the Rebbe is 3 thoughts. But usually when I gave this class, another question came up, and I figured to first address that question before we go to the 3 thoughts that the Rebbe talks about. That said, it's important just to at least share the beginning of that letter, because it's just a one-liner, but it sheds light on the whole topic of decision making. The girl writes into the Rebbe. She says she's looking very hard. She has a lot of proposals coming. The letter is, I'll show you the letter afterwards, it's in the pamphlet. She has a lot of proposals. She has proposals coming her way. But she has a hard time finding the right one.
Suggestions.
Suggestions.
Or not like a bunch of...
She has suggestions coming her way. But she has a hard time finding the right one. That's the lashon that she writes to the Rebbe. So the Rebbe writes back to her, if you start looking the right way, you'll find the right one. That's what the Rebbe writes back to her. And the Rebbe has a letter of 3 thought patterns and what it means to look for the right one. But like I said before we go into those 3 thoughts, let me address the question that's always in the back of everybody's mind, which is before we get to those 3 thoughts, and that is the question of Iker and Tafel. In many letters, when people write into the Rebbe that they have a hard time making a decision, so they write into the Rebbe, I have a hard time, there's Iker, there's Tafel, how do I know what's Iker, what's Tafel? This is a very common question people write, and you find many, many letters like that. And a common denominator in the answer that the Rebbe gives is the Iker is to build a home al Yesodei HaTorah v'Hamitzvos. Now let me ask you a simple question. It sounds like apples and oranges. The person who writes into the Rebbe is very aware of the Iker of Yesodei HaTorah v'Hamitzvos. But yet they had a suffix of Iker and Tafel, because the Iker and Tafel had nothing to do with the fact of Yesodei HaTorah v'Hamitzvos. It actually has something to do with something else, Lagamri, like we'll talk about in a second. So how does the Rebbe's answer at all address the confusion of Iker and Tafel? It's 2 separate discussions. To spell it out more clearly. What's the confusion? So I'll spell it out more clearly. So I'll spell it out. To spell it out more clearly, where does the question of Iker and Tafel play out? And this is not only a question, Iker and Tafel means important and not important, right? So, by the way, this is not only a discussion in Shidduchim. We'll soon see how this answer of the Rebbe is so deep in the sense of recognizing what it takes to connect another person. B'chlal, not only in marriage, in chavedim, in friends, in every area. But before we get to the answer, let's first understand where does the Rebbe even come into this paradigm. Iker Tafel, Yesodei HaTorah v'Hamitzvos, you're not talking to each other. It seems like there's a gap.
How does that answer a question if she's asking, how do I know who to go out with? It would make more sense to give the answer if she's saying, I'm about to get engaged, but there's certain things that bother me.
Oh, so let's spell out her question, and let's actually, I'm here to emphasize that her question is not answered. Seemingly her question is not answered. First we've got to see why her question is not answered, and then we'll understand the depth of the answer that the Rebbe does answer. Iker and Tafel usually plays out in personality, in the questions that people ask. There's a separate discussion of Meshichas Halev. There's a separate discussion in the sense of when a person has something in the heart, but that's a different discussion that's usually not in the Iker Tafel question that people ask. For example, a person comes and writes and says, you know what, I'm meeting an individual. The individual has certain qualities in their personality that really shine, but certain qualities are missing, and they're also important for me. For example, they're smart, they're able to talk to me, they're creative. There's gaps, there are divisions. So although I have this Iker, this Maila, this quality, this character, this way how, this part of the person, but there's something else missing. So therefore, they're in a quandary because they're saying, hey, I'm confused. Last time, I really feel this. How do I somehow say this is not? They're both Iker. They're both important to me. They're both very important in the sense of the personality, in the sense of me connecting to that person. And that's the question that people ask the Rebbe. Hey, I have an individual, a lot. Iker Tafel, tell me, how does the Rebbe's answer, if you say that, Torah mitzvahs at all address that? That's the question we have to spell it out. Personality has nothing to do with you say that Torah mitzvahs. So I actually spell it out in 3 questions to clarify this. The first question we have is, Iker Tafel seems to be in personality. I want to have a clarity in how you say the HaTorah v'HaMitzvahs helps address confusion in personality. That's my first question. Because that's what the people are asking. And it will. There's going to be something here. Second question I have is, the Rebbe is seemingly implying that there's an effort in Yesodei HaTorah v'HaMitzvahs even to people who already by de facto have Yesodei HaTorah v'HaMitzvahs, just by the simple fact that he's mentioning it to someone that means to say there's some kind of effort. What kind of effort? Yesodei HaTorah v'HaMitzvahs, finished. Obviously there's an implication here that it could be missing, although I have Torah v'HaMitzvahs, and what does that really mean? And the third question is, Chazal always give the example of a building. Binyan adiyat. And the Rebbe's answer of Yesodei HaTorah v'HaMitzvahs is a continuation of that same paradigm. Your building has to have a foundation. What's the depth of that mashal? There's a real depth there. I mean, come on, you're building a building and say that, well, what's the depth over here? There's obviously a depth over here that the Rebbe is trying to share in the sense of understanding how we build, what we build, what's really the depth behind it. In order to understand this, I showed you on page 1 different letters. You can read them later for your own, just for added understanding. It's letters where the Rebbe emphasizes the Yesodei HaTorah v'HaMitzvahs, and we'll see how that plays out later. But page 2 is where we actually start the discussion. Okay? So in order to understand, over there. So in order to understand what it means Yesodei HaTorah v'HaMitzvahs, I'm going to take the question and broaden the question. Like I said before, this is really not a discussion only in Shidduchim, but it's an Iker discussion in what it takes to connect to another person, which hinges on a discussion of what defines a person. I'm looking to meet a person. I'm looking to get a handle on who they are. What defines a person? And that's really the confusion of Iker and Tafel. What defines a person? Who is this individual? What does it take for me to say, I got it? And you know what kind of person they are. What's really behind that, I got it? And that's the question of Iker and Tafel, and that's what the Rebbe is trying to answer. To understand this, there's a discussion in Chassidus of what defines a person. The pashtus, seemingly, if you ask someone off the street, personality defines a person. That's what we call personality. It is the way a person expresses themselves. You want to know a person? Look at a personality. Personality is a reflection of a person. So you want to know what kind of person? Look at personality. But that's where it gets confusing, because there's so many parts of that person being expressed in their personality. So how do I really get a handle on who that person is? I can be very similar to them in one thing, but suddenly not in something else. So how do I know whether or not we can be connecting to each other when I don't connect to them in this? I really do connect to them in that. And there are many people who connected to each other in many, and suddenly they find something they don't connect to down the line. So the question really is, what does it take to really connect to another individual? And the answer is, it's nothing to do with personality. And I'll play it out. Imagine, in other words, the premise of that we have now, that in order to connect, I have to have a sprach, I have to have either I talk the same, I see things the same way, I understand things the same way. Oh, and now I can connect to a person. That's not true. You can connect to someone. It goes in both ways. You can connect to someone in the sense of understanding them very well. You're both created, so you both see things the same way. You both are deep, so you can connect to someone in all those ways. They're both smart. They're both kind. They're both responsible. Both connect to each other many ways in the sense of personality. But that will not create a foundation of a connection. As a matter of fact, it can turn over in a second. give you an example. Imagine you have two people know each other very well. They connect to each other. They really get each other. They admire each other. And they both think the same way. Suddenly, one day, one of them shares with the other, I just want to share with you something. I happen to be a Nazi sympathizer. It just happened to be. It just happens to be. Suddenly, the same intelligence that you admired in that person, you're grossed out by. The same creativity you admired and connected to in that person, you're grossed out by. People are not defined by their personality, they're defined by their drive.
You don't necessarily connect to someone just for the drive.
So let's see how that plays out. The drive of a person defines a person. You'll see many people. Let's play it out in a way how two people are very different, but because they have the same drive, they connect beautifully. And they suddenly look at their opposite personalities as an asset and not as a liability. Let me play it out very simple. Two people at work. They're a team.
Well, they say opposites attract.
So let's not look at rules, and let's look at deeper than that. All the opposites and they say opposite, and they say also the similar attract. That's all in personality, right? There's an attraction of personality, and there's a deeper attraction of motivation. I admire your motivation. I admire your drive, and I'm driven by the same drive, and so I feel like I can drive with you.
So your personality will be the initial.
Personality.
It won't hold them together.
A personality is an expression of a drive and not a cause for a drive. My personality is an expression of what, that's why it's called drive. It drives me. It's the driver. There's a driver in every individual, and that's called the motivation. In Hebrew, it's called the ratzon. My willpower, my desire, my direction of life, where I'm heading, where my mind, and where I am invested, my personality will follow. My personality follows my drive, which is my inner decision of where I'm heading, where I'd like to be, where I will take my personality with me. If you really want to get to know someone, you have to get to know their drive. Otherwise, you don't know them. And that's why you're confused, because you don't get a handle on their drive behind the person. Personality is really the clothes that are dressed on top of the drive that a person uses those clothes to drive with. So take two people at work. They're driven by the same goal. Because they're driven by the same goal, I can be creative and he can be very numbered, very into numbers and looks things differently. But suddenly I look, oh, that's such a mila that you have that, because now we can drive together. Now you and I don't have to think like you, but I have to be driven for the same drive as you. If I don't think like you, that's okay. You're going to have someone thinking different than you in life, unless you marry a clone. Or a clown. But you have to have the same drive. Because if you don't have the same drive, you will drive yourselves apart. So a drive is a very important thing to understand what a drive is. A drive, let me play it on an example. Another example. Imagine, this is a foundational thing. This is a depth in humans that we miss. If you look deeply in friendships, you'll see people are driven by the same thing. That creates the foundation for a friendship, everlasting friendship. It's not dependent on anything, it's dependent on themselves. There's no thing that is dependent. It's not because you're smart. I'm driven by the same drive you have. We have to have inside of us the same drive to drive together. Let me give you a few examples. Imagine two people on the ladder. Let me play it out. The ladder has 50 steps. One person is on the 50th step, and another person's on the 50th step. Two ladders. They both have 50 steps. But one person's heading up, and one person's heading down. Are they in the same step? Are they in the same step? Are they in the same level? Sorry, are they in the same level? No. Because when you're heading down, that means to say you're essentially saying, it's a module. Essentially saying, I don't want this ladder. I'm getting off this ladder. So although you right now, it looks like you're on the same step of the ladder as the other person, that's superficial because in a few minutes you're going to be off that ladder. And when I'm heading up, that means my direction defines my step of the ladder. Let's play it out otherwise. Let's say I'm on the first step of the ladder and the other person on the 10th step of the ladder, but we're both going up. That's beautiful. The person on the 10th step looks at the person on the first step. I remember when I was there too. You're heading on the same ladder as me? I'll help you to climb. And the first step looks at the guy in the 10th step and says, wow, I admire the fact that you reached already the second. You don't have to be in the same step of the ladder. But you do have to be in the same ladder.
You have to be in the same direction.
Same direction. Foundation of a person is a direction where we're headed. So let's play it out in a shidduch. Person gets to know someone, or in a friendship, same thing. The Nazi sympathizer, why did he get turned off?
Different
I don't care about your intelligence.
Their drive wasn't.
So the drive of a person is key. Now, you might say that's a very extreme example. It's not an extreme example. Asking a person how they make decisions is key to knowing tomorrow. How do you make decisions? I'm not asking you if you're smart and intelligence is part of the decision-making process. I'm saying, how do you direct your intelligence?
Well, most people make decisions based on which of the two are going to have more benefits for them.
So there's something that drives a person, let's say, decision-making process. Let's talk about this. The Rebbe always says, you say that Torah mitzvah. Why is he saying that? He's trying to say, what drives you in your decision-making process? Here's a few questions people don't realize that drives straight to the core of a person. If I ask someone, so let me ask you a question. Do you have in your mind a picture of where you want to be in life? Do you have in your mind a role model? Do you have in your mind this is in every area of life. We have to drive ourselves and not let society drive us. Ratzon means to say, they say dead fish, what's the lashon? Dead fish go with the flow, right? The Ratzon, it's as is it, right? Ratzon means to say, I have a desire. I'm in charge. If you want to know a person, you need to know where is their willpower. How do they make decisions? Is it based on comfort or is it based on a drive, a mission, a vision, something else that drives them besides them driving themselves nuts? You've got to have something that drives you. If you don't have that something, you have never defined yourself. If you don't define yourselves, others will define you. So you've got to know who the person in front of you is. Says the Rebbe, building a building is the same concept. Here's a beautiful thing. When you build a building, you can always remodel a building. In life, we always change. We always change. People change in life. That's a fact of life. And there's remodeling, just like in a building you change. There's one thing you don't change in a building. You can't change unless you really go. What's the foundation does? What's the key thing? It tells you how many floors the building will have. You can't add floors more than the foundation already decided. You decide in the beginning how many floors. That's how deep the foundation you put. The foundation is a definition of the size and weight of that building. You can make the interior different. You can never change unless you make a new foundation. Says that a person getting married has to have a direction. How many floors? How do you make decisions? We're not a finished product, but we are a finished foundation. And if you're not a finished foundation, you can't go ahead. So the person who's confused with Ikar and Tafel, if you really go back to it, and you ask them a question, so tell me, did you get a handle on that person's drive? Usually the answer is no. If you get an answer of yes, you should have a clarity in the Ikar and Tafel in the sense of seeing deeper. Do you feel that they have the same drive as you? I'm not talking about other questions, but if you have a handle on direction of a person, you should have a handle if you can connect to them. The personality is a consequence of direction. You admire people not based on personality. You admire people based on drive.
What makes you decide that you want to be a certain person's friend? Initially,
there's personality, but for long term, initially there's a lot of things. But if you look at a long-term friendship, building a building together, you can invite guests into your house, but they're not the owner. You can invite anybody into your house. But for an owner, you have one question: who are you? Give me. I need to find out a little bit more. If I guess you took anybody. I mean, even a guess you don't take anybody, right? But I'm saying you need. What's the foundation? Is direction. That's the first thought, in the sense of Yesod HaTorah VaMitzvos. The Rebbe is essentially saying, find out where is their ratzon. Where do they lie in their decision-making process? Foundation equals to ratzon, equals to willpower, equals to the determined, pre-conscious decision. Many people, I would say this, although this is maybe a little extreme to say, but I believe it's true. For a lot of us, the shidduch crisis is also an identity crisis.
Well, yeah, I'm saying,
So
because people get married so young, I feel like a lot of them don't know themselves. They don't know who they are yet.
that's correct.
They're not fully formed
That's
adults.
that's correct. An identity crisis equals to direction. When a person has, and that's okay. It's a healthy thing
It's okay
to go.
get married without knowing
No, I'm
yourself.
saying it's okay to take time to identify yourself,
But you're
because
not given that time. The clock is ticking. You gotta get married young.
let's not talk about. You don't have to. Yeah. We don't have
There's so
to.
much pressure to like get married as soon as possible. That what if people need a little more time to figure themselves out? Like, and then they get married. They don't really know what they want. out of
No.
life.
You should take your time. You should take your time. In identity, you should take your time. No one ever. No, chas v'shalom. First thing a foundation. The Rebbe says you have to have a foundation.
But
You
people say,
don't.
oh, you can figure it out later. You can grow
So
up together.
I'll tell you where the
I don't
confusion,
believe in that.
where the confusion is like this. People say I'm not yet ready to get married because I'm not yet 100% knowledgeable in a lot of things. I'm not yet kind the way I'd like to be. I'd like to be kind, but I want to work on myself more. If you want to be kind, you have a foundation of kindness. You have a whole life to work to be kinder. That's building your building. But you have already decided to be kind. Direction is very different than the product. Direction has to be solid, ironclad. There's a letter in the end of here that I share with you. A boy writes into the Rebbe that his kala doesn't want to wear a sheitel. And so the Rebbe writes back to him that in the area of Yesod HaTorah VaMitzvos, in the direction of a life, it has to be 100%. Because if you want to know what's going to happen tomorrow, you have to know how to make a decision. So if they're basically running their life based on what fits them, how do you know what's going to happen tomorrow? How do you know what's going to happen tomorrow? How do you know where it's going to be 3 times? And he writes to her, he's like, you're not ready for marriage if you don't know what it means to be flexible in foundational things. Because you're going to have to, you're flexible in the sense of giving in. I know it's not comfortable for you and whatever, but if you don't know how to allow that foundation, you're not ready for the concept of building something because
Because you're always going to choose something that's comfortable for you.
and that's what he writes to her. He writes to the boy. That's foundation. If you want to know where a person will be tomorrow, you've got to know how they make decisions. So that's the first thought. I want to go to the other 3 thoughts. So we'll summarize the first thought. First thought you have on your paper number 2. And again, what's the first thought? The first thought is what's a yesod? Paper number 2 summarizes this thought, how to make a decision, Ikra and Tafel. What's Yesod HaTorah VaMitzvos? The decision-making process of an individual. Where is their mind? Where do they lie? There's an I behind intelligence. There's an I behind kindness. There's an I behind responsibility. There's an I behind every one of our personality traits. There's a certain I. That I is defined by my drive. So when you want to get to know someone, you're really wanting to get to know what drives them behind their kindness, behind old koiches hanefesh's personality, right? Chesed, gvura, kindness, a lot of different ways how we express ourselves. The expressions are symptoms. They're not definers. They're driven by a drive. The drive is ratzon. Drive is what motivates me? My willpower, where I decide to be. That's key to find out in a person. Ask them how they make decisions. Ask them who they're role. Ask them questions that gear you to be comfortable in that direction. And that is behind every single friendship. Every single area. If you want a foundation of long term, that's the first point. Okay, let's go now to the next letter.
Number 3.
Page number 3 is a letter that I told you about the boy writing about the sheitel. You can go through it later. Page number 4 is where we're up to next. I just gave this so you can read it later. Okay. So I mentioned to you that the girl wrote to the Rebbe, she said she can't find the right one. The Rebbe says if you look the right way, you'll find the right one. Now let's go to the 3 thoughts the Rebbe writes in that letter as far as now that I know how to make a decision, I have something in front of me. How do I look the right way at something that comes my way? Okay, I know about Iker and Tofel. I know the foundation is important. But now something came in front of me. How do I look the right way? So the Rebbe gives another thought. Okay, thought number 2 in our discussion, but it's thought number 1 in that letter. And the Rebbe writes like this. The Rebbe writes that it's important that a person recognizes that the world was created imperfect. Let me just quote and then explain. The world was created imperfect. There's no perfect person. There's no perfect strategy. There's no moment of perfection in life. We perfect ourselves to the best of our ability, but no one has all milas. No one has all keiches, all the different everything just excelling. There's no such thing. No one has perfect health. Everyone has pekel. That's how it works. Why did Abishta create the world that way? It's a big question that's asked. Why did Abishta create the world imperfect? The Abishta has everything. What? Imagine someone makes a beautiful building, luxury building, and he leaves the front door dilapidated. You're creating a beautiful building. Make it this daf design. You have the ability. Why are you doing that? So there's obviously a reason for it. What's the reason? The Abishta couldn't make everybody to excel in everything. So this is a question that's asked in many, many places. And the Rebbe is quoting it in this letter, but it's based on other places. There's another place where this question is asked in another way. A person writes into the Rebbe, kibbutznik, a socialist. He writes to the Rebbe, why did the Eibishter create the world with inequality? Rich and poor. There should be all the milas. Everyone should have everything. Same question, same concept. Communism, socialism. But it comes from a good point. It comes from a good... why not?
No one would have any drive to do anything.
Well, 1 second. But so let's explain. What does it mean, no, why not? If I have everything, I'm going to do everything.
Why should I work so hard? The next guy's making the same amount of money as me.
No, not you're making. You're all going to make a lot. You're all going to have a lot. There's not going to be any jealousy. It'll be a beautiful world. Mashiach Satan. It's going to be beautiful. Why not? Why did David not create the world that way? So he writes like this. He says that the Eibishter created the world that everyone has something that they excel in, and everyone has something that they need someone else for. Why? Because if I would have everything, I would never connect to anyone. I would never need anyone. So I would stay on my own. The Eibishter create the world in a way I need someone else. So essentially, the ultimate help for social interaction is to feel you need someone else. Says the Rebbe, the recognition that the world is imperfect allows a person to be in the healthy state of feeling they need someone else. Part of the confusion is they don't feel that. Somehow, you don't have a healthy sense of what you have and what you don't have, so you're not in a healthy state of needing. The Eibishter wanted us to connect to each other. So he created us that we need each other. And the only way for a person to have that healthy feeling of needing someone else is to recognize that they actually do need someone else by knowing that they don't have everything. That's the imperfection thought process. Ein shleimus ba'olam. That's the second thought. Says the Rebbe to this girl, this is the first thought in that letter. It's in Yiddish, a yellow letter in Yiddish, but I translated here. You have to think through this concept that the world was created imperfect. Why? Not as a negative, healthy. It's a healthy thing. It's not negative. It's healthy. It's unhealthy to be in a place where you're not really there. You're supposed to be where you're supposed to be, and you're not supposed to put yourselves, spreit sich nicht aus, like they say in Yiddish. Don't spread yourself out in a place where you're not meant to be.
Wait, what is this thing with not meant to be? I thought you were really describing how we're incomplete and we need the other person. So what's this?
Don't think you have something you don't have.
Oh,
Don't attribute yourself.
What they don't have. They're very much aware of that. Everyone has all this
No,
things they want that they don't have.
but don't be aware of it in a way of I don't have it. You don't, but you also do have. So you have to then change it around. Feel that you do have. You have to have it in a healthy way.
I'm saying there's no such person who thinks they have everything.
Okay.
Sometimes.
Sometimes people
And be aware of, I think.
Sometimes
I say
people
having the balance.
are not so. It has to be a balance. The first point.
But there could be a gaiva aspect to that. I don't need anybody else.
Correct.
Or I'm
And
happy with what I
correct,
have.
and that's the first point. The first point over here is there shouldn't be a gaiva aspect. If you want to call it gaiva, call it unhealthy. It doesn't have to be a huge word of gaiva. It's a right, but it's on. That's the second thing. The Rebbe continues. Let me just continue with that same thought. And the Rebbe continues and says, let me make it easier for you. How do you make it easier for a person to have this thought process? And this will help you appreciate how this is really relevant to all of us. The Rebbe says, just like a person's own faults, how do we usually view them? Usually we view our own faults as in a good eye. Someone's going to come to you and tell you, yeah, but you know what else? If a stranger comes and tells you, this is a chisaron you have. Yeah, I know, but what about this? But what? In other words, there's a what about. There's a lot of times a what about right afterwards. It's a ayin toiva. Look at my faults in a good way. Says the Rebbe, you should also have the same thing for someone else. Now let's explain this. What does this really mean? Let me explain this. I'll bring it out like this. What is he really trying to bring out? It's not only a healthy recognition of myself, there's a recognition that Rebbe is trying to imply here of how I look at the other person's faults. Imperfection of someone else, when you hear the word imperfection, you hear the word not wanted. Pay attention to the word imperfection when you think about it to yourself, and when you hear about it to someone else. In yourself, you say, yes, but. In someone else, you say, oh, they're not wanted. That's a type of an elbow. When I think about the word imperfection in terms of myself, I know everybody's imperfect. Big deal. There's a beseder. When I hear the word imperfection in someone else, ooh, I don't want them. They're unwanted. They're less desirable. They have a blemish. Yeah, I'm looking to go shopping, and it's imperfect. I want the perfect one. I'm not going to shop for the imperfect one. It's not wanted. Imperfection equals undesirable. In myself, beseder, big deal. But who? So there's an automatic beseder when it comes to myself, right? So.
It's so sad.
I mean, you're not going to reject
Before we
yourself.
can ask for perfection.
So 1 second. So how am I supposed to have a healthy recognition of someone else's imperfection? It stops me from wanting. The automatic reaction of someone else's imperfection is, it stops me. I don't want that. What do you mean? How do I bring myself to not feel like I lost out, to not feel like I gave in, to not feel like I compromised, to not feel like I could have gotten better? As soon as you hear the word imperfect, you feel like, okay, I can get better. How do I bring myself to say beautiful and actually consciously be there rather than force myself there? How do I have a thought? It can start with the mind. Says it about thought process. And he says, somehow that same comfortable feeling I have of myself, I can somehow transfer to someone else and be comfortable with them. How? So I'll explain. Yeah, you understand? So that's what I'm looking to explain. So the idea is like this. Give you a marshal. There was once a fellow that came over to me and he asked me a question that maybe I shared it here in the past once. It shook me up a little bit. He asked me, he said, tell me, what's the difference between a Chabad rabbi and a Reform rabbi? Remember this?
So many jokes.
Yeah,
No.
I think this
It's not a joke.
Yeah.
I said to him, what do you mean? So he said, I'll tell you. I come to shul. I used to be in the Reform synagogue. And I come into this place and I say, on Shabbos, and I parked in the parking lot. And I come and I say, no, I'm a Chal Shabbos. So everybody tells me, say that the rabbi here is very accepting. Don't worry about it. I went to the Chabad house. I came in, and everybody tells me, the rabbi is accepting. But he tells me, I came from there. I'll tell you the difference. When I came into, this is a deep thought, when I came into the Reform place, and I said, I'm a Chal Shabbos, and I'm a Yochel Neveles, they said, don't worry about it. We have a Treifa version of Judaism. And Treifa Jews are welcome. You're a Treifa Jew. You're welcome. When I came into the Chabad house, and I told him, I'm Chal Shabbos, he said, welcome to the human race. We all make mistakes. I have my issues that I'm working with. I have my chesronos. I'll treat you like myself. I'll help you grow out of your chesronos. And eventually you'll be like me. And I felt that in him. He treated me like himself. He has his chesronos. I have my chesronos.
That's
but he
beautiful.
never changed. He never changed how he never labeled me as a different person. Says the Rebbe the same Nakuda here,
So they were both same direction.
same direction.
Didn't drive.
But no, same drive. He says, I'll help you drive towards my direction. I'm not changing the drive. You're right now Mechal Shabbos, but you're looking to grow out of it. I have this chumrah that I'm working also. Everybody has their issues they're working on. You're looking to grow out of it. You're not looking to come to my shul and say, I always want to be Mechal Shabbos. If you came to my shul, you know you're going to be like me. It'll take you time. It'll take you time, and I'll help you get there. I'm not throwing you out, I'm labeling you out. So this is a nakud on how we see the chesronos of someone else. Let's say it in simple words. Don't identify someone by their chesronos,
By their failures.
but don't identify them by their chesronos, but realize, I'll put it this, don't identify them by their challenge, but realize it's a challenging moment. They are not their challenge. They are in a challenging moment. Says the Rebbe, that's a key thing before a person able to connect to another person. They have to know how to connect to another person's chesronos, to another person's areas that they're not good at. Are they able, if you want to be able to connect to another human, you have to be able to connect beyond the chesronos and beyond identifying them as a chesron.
So that's a good
That's-
way of having Abbas Yisrael towards
That's obviously
anybody.
so. That's why I said this letter is not just for Shidduch. It has a application in many other areas as
In
well.
relationships.
So it's in relation, in connecting, and obviously so in every area. So that's the first. That's the first thought process here on page on the page 4. The next thought process the Rebbe continues on. So again, what do we have? We have number 1. What is Yisoidi HaTorah B'Mitzvahs? And we discussed that's direction. Number 2. We have the imperfection thought process. Ein shleimus ba'olam. There's no such thing as shleimus, which includes in that how a person connects to another person's chesronos. Once you understand there's no shleimus, so I'm not scared by someone's imperfection, and I'm also able to connect to them 100% with their imperfection. That's the second thought. Okay, continues the Rebbe with the third thought. The Rebbe says a lot of times the reason why a person can't make a decision is because they're afraid. Why are they afraid? It says they're afraid what's going to happen in the future. They know a lot of cases where it doesn't work out. So therefore they're afraid to go ahead. There's fear. And the Rebbe continues, and the Rebbe writes, that it's actually a valid fear. Because chasana is a iber, he uses a strong lashon. It's a iber lebenish in Lebanon. It's a strong occurrence in life. It's very and it changes a person. And so therefore, as much as you know before the chasana, a person will change somehow after the chasana. So that makes the fear even stronger. So how do I know? How do I wrap my mind around the unknown?
The person will change, or you
Person
you don't know
changes.
him good enough?
No, person will change after chasana. The chasana changes a person. It does something to the personality. It brings out other parts of them. It brings out other scenarios of life that are deeper. So it allows a person's to express themselves more differently than you saw until now. Not change as in change. You didn't see it until now. You wouldn't see it until now. You're only going to see it later. You're only going to see certain.
That's like a little scary.
So he says that's a scary thing. That's a scary thing. He said that's a scary thing for a person. What's going to happen in the future, and especially since it will change. So here the Rebbe writes a line that has to be explained. So he says, here he goes into the word bitachon. And we have to explain what that means. Suddenly he says the word bitachon. Oh, you have to have bitachon. It's going to work out. And mizet, that works out with people. And what is he saying? What's the Rebbe answering over here? What's bitachon going to somehow alleviate the anxiety that a person has with this realistic, grounded anxiousness? That's not it's not luftig. It's not in the hot air. It's a real concern. So, bitachon. So how's that going to help my concern to allow me to go into a decision-making process? So explanation is.
And what if somebody's not concerned? Is there something wrong?
No.
There's nothing wrong with that.
No, somebody feels like past a certain point they have no control. It's like
So they
beyond.
already. So maybe you're
higher
expressing the thought process, the consequence of the thought process that Rebbe is talking about. Let's see if that's what you're expressing. Let's see. So the answer. So in order to understand this letter, I'll just mention another letter. There's a person that was once writes into the Rebbe, same Nakuda. And he writes that he's very sick, he's in his hospital bed, and he had already a few operations, and he's boidig b'sifrei refuah. They didn't have Google then. So he's going through a bunch of different sifrei refuah, and he's trying to figure out his ailments, he's trying to figure out what's going on with him. And he's he has a lot of anxiety. Right? Since the Rebbe has a lot of anxiety, so the Rebbe writes back to him, bitachon and Eivishten, and what's the Rebbe answering him? He has, doesn't the Rebbe always say to know your matziv, to ask a doctor, to be boidik? What do you tell him? Not to be boidik. What's the answer over here? An answer like this. There's two kinds of anxiety. And you'll see this as a kav in all the letters. There's an anxiety out of the process of making a decision, and there's an anxiety of wanting to know the future. If you're anxious because you want to fly, you want to be able to fly. Birds fly, why can't I fly? I save so much time a day. And it really bothers me. Why do I have to waste so much time flying? Then you have to be institutionalized. Why? Because something you can't do, don't think about. And if you want to be a fortune teller, I want to know the future. Why is that okay? You won't. You can't. You'll never know outcomes. You can do the best you can to get as close as you can to a desired outcome, but you will never know outcome. So if a person is anxious because of outcome, future, that's a moment where it says the Rebbe, that's a moment where a person has to recognize the world was created in a way that you will never know outcome. It's not meant for you to invest your mind in a place where your mind can't wrap itself around it. You will never know outcome. Same way you don't know future, the same way you can't fly. This is not meant to be a place where you put your mind. So what's bitachon means? Let go. Allow your mind to let go of the areas it can't tackle. There's two kinds of anxiousness. There's an anxiousness that I have in the areas I could tackle. And there's an anxiousness I have from the can't. Why am I anxious? Because I can't. I sent in the resume and I'm anxious. What's going to be the response? It's easy to say, right? We're all anxious. But don't paralyze yourself because of a future not to allow you to be in the present. Bitachon over here, the Rebbe writes the word bitachon in this area as a menucha in the sense of future teller. Knowing future. In other words, there's a split here. This girl says the Rebbe to this girl, I need you to be healthy. I need you to have a healthy state of looking at things. Recognize in every decision you will make in life, there's going to be a component of future that you will never have a guarantee. There are no guarantees and 100% securities in life. Get used to it. That's the world, imperfect world Hashem created. He wanted that we should never have that moment of guarantee, which is another discussion why. We actually discussed a little bit why, right? So get a hold of yourself and let go of future. That's the third thought that the Rebbe shares with this girl. You need to learn how to let go of the areas you can't tackle. If you could do, but if you can't, have to be able to let go. That's the third thought. That's the third thought. So again, the first thought was yisoid. Person has to have the ability to detect the drive. Drive defines the personality. Personality is a consequence. It's a lavush. It's the clothing. It's the way the drive. It's the way the drive is embedded in that person. You're always looking for the I. So who is the person behind that personality? I can't get to know them. Suddenly they open. Now I know. I see. Suddenly I see how they are all over. Why? The drive shines on the whole person. I know who the person is now. I get a sense. Now I'm clear. Now I can make a decision. Why was I confused? Because I don't know who this person is. I see a lot of things. Yeah, I can talk and connect. Nazi sympathizer, gay pfeifen. I don't want to have anything to do with you. Suddenly I get an idea who the person is. Get to know the drive. That's number one. Number two that I've discussed is you want to make a decision of connecting to another individual. You have to recognize people are imperfect. You are imperfect. You need another person. Do you feel that need, or it's like I'm going shopping for a pair of shoes. I can buy another pair of shoes somewhere else.
People look at Shidduchim. I'm going shopping for the purpose.
But so a healthy person has a need to connect to another human. They have a need. I need to connect. And the going shopping is based, I need to eat. I don't need to wear that pair of shoes. I need to eat. I need to breathe. There's a need for humans to connect to another person. And they have to feel that's a healthy need. When they feel that need, they have to also recognize I'm going to be connecting to someone who also has needs, who's not perfect. And that's normal. And look at it in the same way you look at, so now I'm suddenly tackling the chesroinus, the imperfection. Suddenly it's not the unwanted merchandise, but it's the normal, healthy person that has needs like I have needs. We're all normal. It's not unwanted merchandise. It's a different way of looking at humans. Second nekuda. Third nekuda, the Rebbe says, when you make a decision, there's a future component. You need to learn to recognize the difference between decision-making in the areas that you could make a difference and decision-making in the areas of future that you simply can't tackle. It's a nice story I shared last year. There was a pilot in Eretz Yisrael that was on the way to it was when they bombed Iraq, Iraqi reactors. So they interviewed him. His name was Elon. He afterwards was in the space shuttle and he passed away. Ramon. Yeah, Ramon. So he was also one of the pilots. He was one of the pilots that bombed this Syrian Iraq in 1981. So they interviewed him. He said a nice word. They asked him. He took him with him. So when he was interviewed, after he went on. No, not by the space shuttle. But after he went to the Iraqi thing. So he was interviewed later by the media. Yeah, he was one of the pilots that bombed the Iraqi reactors. Like 7 pilots. So he said a nice word. So they asked him a shaila before he left.
There's a video clip.
There's a video clip. It's on. So that before he left, there was a military assessment that he wouldn't come back. Why? Because he was the last plane leaving Eretz Yisrael, so he was the most exposed to the missiles because he's already not the first one, so it was a surprise. He's after. So he knew that. So they asked him, "How did you feel when you took off?" So he said, he said like this. He said, in the military we're trained that we do whatever we can and we focus on our mission. And the rest we leave up to fate. Which really, we're all pilots in life. We all take off and we never know the future. And we're trained, if we train ourselves to be present, in the present, the Eibishter helps with the future. And that's really the lesson with that story.
That's a Gavaldic line.
We're all pilots in life. We all have turbulence.
No, but
if we have to be present in the present. And if he would think about the future when he took off, he wouldn't be able to take off. He wouldn't be able to fly. We all have no choice. We all have no choice. We're all flying. We have no choice. If we're going to think about the future and the present, we're not going to take off. We can't take off. We're bombarded with choices and decision-making stuff in life. We can't afford to lose balance in the flight.
Shidduchim, you do have a choice. It's a little different.
No,
didn't have a choice.
Ultimately, you really don't, because everything's really set up from Hashem.
Yeah, but you have a choice.
But ultimately, you also don't, because you'll never be able to make a decision and fly if you don't learn how. Because you're going to be anxious. So you made a decision. What's going to happen? It's going to make you crazy. Person walks into a job and thinks maybe I'll be fired. Will be fired because they won't do a good job. Person who walks into a job and says, if I was already in this job, let me make the best I can. They'll make the best I can and they'll probably will work out. They'll maybe be promoted. The negative thought process brings to negative reactions. The negativity here, this leads into Trachkut, the negativity here is in future. There's always a question we have to ask ourselves. Can I do something or can't I do something? If I can, do it. If I can't, I'm not wasting my life in the can't. If I can do something in the can't to make it come closer, so do it. That's all part of the can, which is present. Future, as in future, I am not a fortune teller. And I'm not going to waste my life in investing my mind in future that has no place in present. That's the word. That's what the Rebbe is saying.
I don't know which type of anxiety you're having.
You can ask yourself one question. Can I do something about it right now? You sent in the resume. Can you do something about it?
If you're about to get engaged. Not about...
If the anxiety here is because what's going to happen in the future, the person might change, that has no place in the present.
That's not a personal thing with this person.
But you ask, is there anything in this person right now that bothers me?
No.
And if the answer is no, but who knows, the who knowing will destroy your life in many other areas if you don't learn how to deal with it now. The who knows is the worst thing to deal with in life. Who knows? He knows, but I'm not meant to know, and I won't know. So why should
What
I?
if there is things that bother
There's
you? but
always
there's-
something that bothers. There's no such
What if like
thing.
it's
There's always
mostly
something
good
that
things
bothers.
and there's one or two things that really bother you, but you don't want to pass it up.
So this is not referring to things that concern you now. This is the third thought process we have now is a thought process of fear. There's something called fear. People are indecisive many times, and you ask them why, it'll boil down to fear. I'm afraid. What will happen? But what happened with Yankel and what happened with Shmerel? There's a fear. Fear of future is a real thing. If it's a fear of present, you can go back to the first two thought processes. You can go back to the other things. Why does it bother you? Is it dry? That's something else. This thought process of number 3 is a fear of future. Fear of future, the answer to it is it has no realistic place in the realistic life. Future is not supposed to be a
Fear of the unknown?
fear of the unknown. Yeah. Fear of future is fear of the unknown. It's fear of things beyond my control. We like and seek to be in control. The number one thing people want is security in life, is guarantees in life. That's what we want. And the thought that I'm not in control makes us nuts. And could really drive a person nuts. Fear of future is a real thing. Fear of unknown is a real thing. It blinds a person. It paralyzes a person. It's real, and that's what that was addressing here. Now let's go to the last and final, fourth thought.
So this whole thing is, in a way, it's when the idea of letting go, because you have no control of what's going to happen in the future, then let's say if something does happen, you realize that it really all was the Abishter. It was like your fate. It was not like you could say to yourself,
So now you're dealing with
something I
After
did,
it
or something I
happened, you have
said,
no
or
choice.
something.
But naturally, people are going to blame themselves. And say,
People
I knew
there's-
it. I knew it. I should have gone with my
So one
gut
second.
feeling.
So one second. Now you're dealing with past. There's a separate discussion of past. There's a discussion of future that Rebbe deals with here. I actually added a letter here about past. But you know what? You mentioned it. I'll mention it now. Okay. The past is regret.
Right.
That's another area of anxiety that's separate from future. Future is the unknown. Where am I heading? What's going to happen? I can't. It's like a deer in the headlight. Right? I can't. I'm frozen. No, you're not frozen. Go ahead. Do what you can. Don't put your mind in areas that paralyze yourself. It's like a self-inflicted wound by putting yourself in future. Right. Let go of future. Right? Fine. Now, there's a different thing. Person already did something of past, and they're like living the past, and they can't let go of past. And the past is paralyzing their present, right? It's coming from the other angle.
Right.
And it could be regret. It could be other things that's a... So the emes is, there's a story that I shared. Remember this story? There's a story that with Rav Mendel. So in Russia, there were Muslim. There were people who informed on other people. Unfortunately, the Russians were very good in interrogations, and they forced other Lubavitchers to sometimes, through torture, to inform. It's unbearable torture. And so there was a story, someone told me, that he ended up in Russia because of another informer who was a Lubavitcher. That was forced. And so when the Lubavitcher, who was the Musser, left Russia, he sat with Rav Mendel. Rav Mendel gave him a ticket. He was going to New York, to Grand Heights. And the Rebbe gave a hira to all the Lubavitchers that came from Russia not to share anything about the past. You know, it was under duress. It wasn't willingly, and you won't hear from them who was who. It was a terrible time. So the kids there, so Rav Mendel was talking to him about going back to, he felt bad at the end of the day. He wasn't. So the Lubavitcher, who was the victim, heard that Rav was talking to his master. So he said, how can you talk to him? Look what he did to me and my family. How can you talk? So Rav told him, you have to learn from Yosef and his brothers. Right? Yosef and his brothers. So he told Rav you should koyach. Your kids are in England. My kids are here in Russia. So it's easy for you to say, but I'm the one here in Russia with my. So Rav told him, number one, I wouldn't share this with you if I didn't feel that way. And number two, you can't live a happy life if you don't learn the skill of letting go of the past and being in the present. You simply will never be able to learn how. But how do you learn that skill? What is that skill? That skill is really rooted in the same area as the future. And the last thought process that we're going to see here in the letter will fill in the full picture. And the idea is like this. The ability of a person to let go of the past has to come from how he looks at the present. How he looks at the present will really be the root for the past and future. Let's go to the present and see what it talks about the present, which is the last thought process here. And then we'll go back to this past component, and it'll be in a different light, and the future will also be lighted up. Usually, says, and the Rebbe says, this is the most important out of everything. This last thought process of the present will teach us how to deal with past. It'll teach us how to deal with future. It'll shed the present in a different light. And he said like this. If I ask you this question, I'm going to say it in my own words, and I'll say what the Rebbe writes. If I ask you this question, true or false, the most novel inventions happen by people who had predetermined strategies to bring them about. It's not true. It happened by surprise. So, hey, Bazeh, let me ask you a klutz kasha. If it happened by surprise, I would assume it happened to many people. Whatever happened by surprise to that inventor happened also to someone else. Why did that inventor come up with it and not someone else? So what does he have in his way of looking at life that allowed him to see that surprise and the other person didn't see that surprise?
I know that it occurred to other people.
Electricity was a mistake. The same mistake could have happened anytime. Why did he suddenly see that mistake? And many other things were mistakes, quote unquote, that happened that suddenly they did not, it came from left field. So it probably happened to many other people. Why did this guy see it? And the answer is because some people ignore mistakes because they say it can't be good. I know how things that are good will happen in life. This is left field. It's unanticipated. Why should I even pay attention to it? It came my way, but it's not the way I think it's going to happen. They ignore surprises of life. The brilliant people of life are the ones that invite surprises and pay attention to what happens to them as much as they pay attention to what they want out of life. They allow life to teach them. That's called hashgacha pratis. The ability of a person to listen to things that come their way, although they are unanticipated, unexpected, and left field, is the biggest gift the person can have to themselves, because suddenly they're open now to new opportunities they never ever invented. And suddenly they can look back and say, wow, that brought me closer to my end game even more than I thought before. Hashgacha pratis. That ability, says the Rebbe, is the number one thing that stops. That's right, the ikr. That's the ikr that can stop a person from seeing the right proposal. Why? My shechina doesn't really know me. Why should I even listen? My friend, who is she? Who? It came your way by design, not because of them, not because you understand how it's supposed to come. Who said the most amazing things happen? People hear it. It's not shayach. Next, not shayach. Let me look into it. Oh, it is shayach. What happened? Nothing changed. You changed. You were open. Nothing changed. The ability of a person to listen to things that come their way in life changes the way they look at the past also, and changes the way they come into the future. When a person recognizes that the achievements they have in life are not going to necessarily come because they planned and they anticipated and they brought themselves towards their desired outcome, but rather they're open to the fact that the Eibishter has his ways to make things come my way, and I should be open to them. I don't have to say yes to something that comes my way, but I have to listen. Maybe it's good for my friend, maybe it's good for me, maybe if I don't listen, and listening doesn't mean to be yetze. I'll go out to be yetze. That's not listening. Listening means actually listening. I want to give the example. A child that comes home and says to his father, can I have your cell phone? I want to call you. Why do you need my cell phone? Says the child, because I see how you listen very much to the businessmen that call you on your cell phone. I like those type of conversation with you on your phone, right? You understand? So listening is not something that you do by default. It's a conscious decision to listen to something. Inventors listen. They listen very carefully to things that come their way, not only to the decision-making process and the thought that they have, how they want things, but how they come. That changes my past too. I listen to my past. So what can I learn out of it? What can I take out of it? Maybe they actually brought me closer. Maybe not. I don't always understand what comes my way. But the ability to recognize that I'm not in control of my way, I'm not the one who defines my destiny, I'm not the one who's really running down the path, but I'm being brought down the path and I'm doing the best I can to go down the path, etc., etc. That allows me to reflect on past. Friedrich Rebbe said when he came out of Russia, he wouldn't sell it for $1 million. Didn't say millions with anyone, but he wouldn't go back. Many people have experiences in life. They
So
look
what?
his experience, his bad experience of prison. But many people have things that happen to them in life, and they look back. Sometimes we understand, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we say our personality changed, my sensitivity would change. There are many things that can happen to me in life. But the bottom line is there's two things about the past. I learn. If it happened by design. I learn and I let go. Because it's not mine. I am in the present. I let go of future, I let go of past. I do what I can to bring myself closer to future in the present, and I do what I can to be in the present based on my learning experience of the past. But I don't live in the past, and I don't live in the future, and I live in the present. That is bitochen, based on hashkacha pratis. Hashkacha pratis means there is purpose, not just strategy. Strategy and purpose mixed together is the beautiful ingredient that leads to peace. That's what allows a person to have some kind of tranquility in their life. That allows them to continue on doing.
Strategy.
Strategy means I'm deciding. I want to do A, B, C, and that's going to get me to B, right? But sometimes E can happen. Oh, I thought suddenly someone who doesn't even know me gave me a beautiful proposal. A job came out of nowhere. I'm not going to say, oh, it's not shaykh that it should come. Usually when something comes from someone that knows me. How could it be someone who doesn't know you? Is it going to be? No, I'm going to listen. Because why am I listening? Because I'm recognizing you never know. The you never know plays to my benefit too. Maybe that's going to come. Maybe the little piece of garbage can be gold. I don't know. How do I know? Because I decided they don't know. I don't know. If I taka realize how much I don't know, my no is different. And the no then is infused with an enthusiasm that has a different enthusiasm, and that's called bitochen. And that's what the Rebbe writes over here. That bitochen changes the present, changes the past, it changes the future, it gives a different person drive, and that suddenly allows a person to take away the indecisiveness and fear of future, the baggage and luggage of past, allows a person to be present in the present. Suddenly there's a different focus on the things that come your way. You're able to dig through the ikar and tafel and come to the drive, etc. of a person, and that allows a person, these four thoughts of what the Rebbe writes, that allows a person to come to an easier decision. So I'll just summarize it. And we'll finish. You can look through the handout afterwards, and you'll see all the different letters that address this. But we'll summarize it like this. The first letter we had was about Iker and Tafel in the sense of foundation. Person is undecided. They meet someone, Iker, Tafel, I don't know, there's a personality. Says there at one point. Let's put it into one word. Find out drive. Drive drives personality. We get very confused with the personality of a person. Find out, dig deeper, and that's going to give you a different light of the personality. The personality shines differently when you get to know the drive. So you're confused, I got it. You're allowed to say no to everything. Everything is an ikr for you. That you're entitled. But before you say no or yes, see it in the light of the drive. You might change your decision.
Can I ask you, how do you find out? You ask them questions on their amuna or their experiences. Like, how does someone who's like, okay, you know what, this person seems okay. How do I find out their drive?
So I told when I gave this in there, I told two questions that I suggested. The role model of a person. Now, role model of a person. Now, I wouldn't say the word who is your role model. I would say, do you have anyone who you can envision yourself? I want to be like them in a certain area. If you don't have, put it this way, if a person has no role model in their life, they have no direction.
That's very dangerous.
1 second.
It's very dangerous.
Let me first explain it, and then you'll tell me why it's
Not
dangerous.
to have someone who you look to for.
Oh, why? Because means
Say,
you have
I know
no.
everything. I'm gonna make all my own decisions.
Not only if you have not only that. How do you who do you want to be like? Forget about if you ask them questions in
You want to
life.
be like your father, your
Who
mother,
do you
your
want?
sister,
What's
you
your
know,
direction? Who do you
Is it
see?
better to say who's your role model?
That's a very tough. That's a very heavy loaded
You
question.
might emulate someone, but not necessarily want to be like them.
You just say it lightly. Who do you see yourself like? Who do you see? Basically, you're asking them their vision. How do you see yourself down the line in A, B, C, in different areas of life? If you want to get a sense of a person's direction, you've got to get a sense of how they see themselves. So ask questions that bring you there. That's the first nakuda. Simply ask them questions that go down that path, and that's what people do.
How do you see?
How do you see yourself in this area? How do you see? Like, give me a few examples. Like this person.
Well, he said something similar to that. Where do you see your life going? Something
Not
like
only
that.
where you see your life going. Give me a person. This is a person that I admire. Admiration, respect is basically saying that's the person. Now you know what's in his head, where they're headed. Person says, I never ever thought about that. I don't know. Then they have no direction. Then how do you know what they're gonna be tomorrow?
So can you just
Right?
say, who do you aspire to emulate?
What do you aspire to be? Okay, that's in the area of aspiration. Aspiration is the I of a person. Admiration, aspiration, these are all words that are not personality. They're the I of the person. They're Ratzon. Where do I want to be? Where do I aspire? Where am I headed? These are all words that show on the I. The person's personality will do everything they can to bring that I to fruition. But you've got to know what that I is.
The drive.
Second thing is, there is also a decision-making process. How do you make decisions? How do you make decisions in life? Is there a person you consult with? Don't say the word mashpia. Is there a person you consult with? Now let me ask you, if that person who you consult with, is it possible for you, I would ask a question like this. Have you ever done something that you felt was uncomfortable, undesirable, but because of a sense of direction, because of an importance of it, you did it anyway?
Yes.
Give me an example. That's a fair question to ask. Basically, you're asking, does anything drive you besides comfort? Does anything drive you in life? Give me an example. What drives you? I want to know.
Sounds very
Down-
awkward to like ask somebody that straight out.
You know what? In an interview for a job, they ask you a proper interview. They're going to ask you real questions. Why do you want this job? Tell me why you want this job. You've got to know the I of the person. If you're afraid to ask about the I, don't be afraid to encounter it later. If you want to get to know the I, then you've got to get to know the I.
Well, obviously everybody wants to make money. That's like a general thing.
Making money.
What response is appropriate to why do you want this job? That's considered a normal response.
In job interviews, they want to know your enthusiasm. They want to know if you like the job. They want to know if this is part of
You
your
can say
team player.
generic things like, I really want to make a difference. I want to give back to people. Just to make
If they're a
yourself
good
sound
interviewer, they can.
Whatever in the
They can.
field is that you're working in, but like, I don't know. Like,
But over here, it's not about the job. Here, it's about life. Here, you're not looking about the job. This is more about a person, an identity of a person. So what you're looking for, you're keying into direction. You're keying into lifestyle. Person says, I don't want to have kids until I make $1 million. Then you know what kind of person the person is, right?
so like what?
Or whatever it is. Whatever.
Buy a house first.
Direction, whatever it is. So you get to know a sense of direction, how that person thinks. Person says, certain areas of Torah are not part of my lifestyle. So now you get to know that they're making their own decisions. Yisoidei HaTorah v'Mitzvahs is a conscious decision a person makes. So once they're picking, they might pick in a lot of other things in life. It's very dangerous. And every community is different what's considered picking. You see, it's not about what I do, it's about where I'm headed. In some communities, it's accepted certain things. In some communities, the indicator of direction is not a clear-cut indicator. Every community is different. Some communities, everyone does A. Some communities they don't. In 5 towns, no one has a beard. It doesn't show in any direction that someone's looking to be different, right? Every community is different. Every community is. So you want to get to know a person's I, you have to find indicators of direction. Where are they headed? Who are they? Who is your identity? Who are you? That helps clarify the confusion of personality.
But when do you, so suppose this comes with Shidduchim, when do you start delving into like this, when you already feel like you're comfortable after 2-3 dates, or you wait too long? When does a person start?
Asking these questions.
Yeah.
Person has to feel you can't go someone off the bat and ask them that.
Right.
You got to be comfortable a little bit
Right.
to ask these questions, but usually people ask them. There's no cloud.
There's no
But you have to ask it. You have to get there. You can't get anywhere without asking it. So people say, "Oh, we had a great time bowling together," or whatever, and I don't know what kind of person it is. Then you don't know the person.
Right.
Then you have no clue about the person.
Right.
So that doesn't get you anywhere. And then they're like, "Do you know?" I don't know the person. So you didn't get anywhere. And then I'm confused because I liked bowling, but I didn't like hiking. But you didn't get to know the person. You got nowhere. So what really, and then suddenly one person, I sense that they have the same, they're driven the same, suddenly you like things you didn't like.
Right, that's true.
Why do you like things you didn't like?
Because I'm listening to right.
Because you have the same, so you have a different feeling. So drive gives feeling. Drive gives juice to a person. People are juice. They're not, they're not a potato and tomato that you slice and you say, I have this and I have that. And there's got to be a juice behind it. And the juice behind it has to be the drive of the person. Otherwise you're slicing potatoes and you're confused because I like potatoes, but I don't like tomatoes. When they're mashed together, they don't work. So, it's not going to work. It doesn't work that way. And that's what the Rebbe was writing. In all these areas, the Rebbe is going to the juice. The eye behind it, whether it's direction, whether it's how you look at yourself, whether it's how you look at life, whether it's how you look at past.
As a mother of kids in Shidduchim, there's only so many questions you could find out about the girl or the boy until they go out. Like, my kids are like, what am I have a daughter who's married, so she went out with the boy like 2 or 3 times, and then she started, okay, let's talk topless. Like, I know you're from a smaller family. What's your thing on, I don't know if I should even answer, what's your thing on children? Oh, I want to schedule them. Where's your Muna? Where's your, you think that children are a blessing? Where are you at this point? So when she got back to me, I told the shotgun this, he's not on the same way. So it's like, maybe the mother's going to speak to him about it. I said, what do you mean the mother's? This is what he just
his
said.
mind?
Yeah, this was, but I would never have thought before to even ask such questions
Well, you can't,
about.
how can
Directions.
you?
Right,
There's no
way
do a
you
basic
feel-
checking.
You can't
There's
find-
only so much you could do until you make
Right.
yourself crazy. Like,
A paper is a paper, and a person's a person.
And everyone who you call up tells you that, yeah.
you could check for hate demands.
Everybody's
Things
gonna
that
tell
come
you
out
nice
after.
things. I mean,
At least he was honest.
well, that's very important.
That's right. Baruch Hashem.
But people do ask ridiculous questions.
But that's also true. I
And
mean,
people are not honest.
And people are not honest also.
yeah.
And people don't want to be interviewed. They don't look at it as a job.
Gemara says there's 3 ways you get to know a person. Bikisoi, bekaisoi, right? Mekoisoi. When a person's money, how they spend, bekaisoi, when they get upset, bekaisoi, when they're drunk.
Oh,
Well, you don't.
Basically, what the common denominator is, beyond comfort zone. That's the common denominator. It's like a certain area that I cover myself, and then honesty, then suddenly, oh, that's who I really am. Those are 3 areas.
But you're never gonna see
You're not
it.
gonna
When you
see
meet
it.
the
Also,
person,
you see a lot of times people say,
People
oh, they
never-
got a ticket. They got a ticket, or they got
See how
something
they react to
sudden.
the ticket, yeah.
And
Spending, but that's it. Nothing else.
People know how to cover up very well.
huh?
Right at the beginning, you're not going to see.
No, it's hard.
the
You can't.
past.
Of course,
You're not
everyone's on their best
gonna see
behavior.
it.
Try to
You're
get
not
them to
gonna
cast.
see.
What?
Try to make them upset.
Make them angry.
Make them angry.
You know that
Get them to cast.
guy, the girl pulled the key out of the car because she wanted to see what he was doing.
I heard that.
That's a very famous story.
Whoa.
You know it, right?
What's the
Say it, they
Everybody
don't.
knows that story. No,
No,
you
say
don't
that
know the story.
She
She pulled the
don't know
keys
it.
out. Because she wanted to see how he got upset,
If
and
he's a-
how his reaction would
if
be.
he's a
And she
hacker,
based
right?
them, if that would be another date or
But how did he-
based on how he reacted.
While he was driving, she pulled the key out of the car.
No,
Get
not
angry at
while
her.
I was driving.
And